map of the United States. So it's an interactive map. And you can click on the state of Tennessee since we're here today. And essentially, guys, what we did is, I mean, this is thousands of websites and hundreds of thousands of people that run at the local level. Yes, everyone knows who Joe Biden is and Trump and all that stuff, but there's a lot of things going on at the state level in Tennessee and in your local county here. So we broke down who's your governor, who's your sheriff, who's your attorney general, everything. And you can literally click on your county. If you guys have a website in your county, we connected to your website. If you don't have a website, unfortunately, a lot of political groups are active on Facebook. If you don't have a Facebook page, Williamson has a Facebook page. If you don't have a Facebook page, there's nothing going on in your county. If you happen to find something going on in your county, please reach out. Please email us and let us know. There were places in parts of Alaska where the population's 200. They have nothing going on. So, I would encourage you to find the next event and show up. Here on our site, you can find your county, you can check your local GOP calendar, and we want you to connect with the people who are running things on the ground level. Has anyone here attended like local GOP meetings or anything? They're pretty small. A lot of people don't. I mean, school boards have kind of gone more, because there's mama bears. People are getting over what is going on with those kids. There you go. So, again, find the next event, show up. But these are statistically small by design to ensure that the power stays with a few. All you have to do is show up. So if you want to support your fellow patriot where you shop, you can find hundreds of America First businesses that need your support under places. And that's why they're really feeling it, guys. These companies have lost billions in the last 30 days, billions. And we're just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
So let's support America First businesses. If you're going to an event like this or any other events where America First Patriots are needed and welcome, go and share it on the events tab. If you want to click on the events tab, you'll see we have C.A.U.S.E Fest today. So there's a lot of events going on, but it seems like they're hard to find, or you find out about them and it's too late. Stop putting your equity in Facebook and Instagram. I don't know how many times, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's unfortunate, some of the GOP groups, that's where they don't even have a website. Where's the money going? So, the movement doesn't grow without sharing your message, and that's how we got where we are now. We are the new Republican Party, and the historic Republican Party has always been known as the silent majority. Enough with the silence, for Pete's sakes. Go make your voice. Yeah, that's why we're here. This was not going on 3 years ago, right? Go make your voice heard. Go flex your muscles. Now is not the time to be silent about any of these crucial issues we're discussing this weekend. There's a lot of things and a lot of people here that you would do for respect and not money. So a lot of people are getting involved and rolling up their sleeves because I'll tell you what, my family didn't fight for this. My family isn't buried for this. This is not the America that I grew up. You know what I mean? This is incredible. And has anyone here lived out of country, just out of curiosity? Yeah. People died to come to this country every day, and they know the election was rigged, but yet here we are, right? So if you're silent about your beliefs because you are worried, someone will be offended. That your beliefs are not that important to you, but rather what people think about you is. When you stand up for what's right and true, you will receive both love and hate, I can rest assure you. But everyone will know what you were fighting for. So again, I'm Marnie with the Patriot Impact. I'll be wandering around if you have any questions whatsoever. So, thank you guys.
Yay.
So testing the mic here. Hello everybody. I'm George Webb. Hasn't it been great so far with these speakers? Oh, amazing stuff. And I'll talk about that. I just met my personal hero right here, Ryan Christian, right out here. Right here in Nashville, runs Unlimited Hangout, Whitney Webb, all the guys. So Ryan Christian right here. I just met Jay Dyer. I mean, that's a personal, incredible thing. Do y'all mind if I pray? don't mind if I pray just at the start of this, because I feel like this is a really fantastic event, and I need God right now. So I'm going to just go ahead and do it, and if you all want to pray with me, that's fine. But dear Jesus, dear God, dear all-powerful God, thank you for this moment where these people have come from all over the country to let their souls and heart and truth be shared. That action, that motion, that giving and taking and receiving is what makes us human and what makes us vessels, messengers in your power. And I just want to thank you, Lord, and please help me on this speech. Thank you to Jesus. Thank you. So I appreciate it. I just had to say that because I feel so fortunate to be here. I'm going to give a little speech about what they call citizen journalism. Now, can I just have a quick show of hands? Because I'm a citizen journalist, so you're seeing one. We're not all this big. We're not all this tall. Does anybody know what I mean by citizen journalism? Okay, a couple of hands out here. There's some folks there. So citizen journalism is really, at the end of the day, might have some feedback here, I'll move over here. It's taking what was taken from us. It's taking back what was taken from us, which is truth, and reporting the truth. And I think you've all seen, since World War II, CIA, etc., we've gotten farther and farther away from truth with our wars. Remember Korea, Vietnam, and we keep getting further and further away for the oil wars, now Arab Spring, and now we're into this. We've taken what was okay before, and now we've moved it to our political situation. So citizen journalism is saying, hey, wait a minute, we can get involved in this. We can go out to the place that they say is on fire and is being terrorized by white supremacist terrorists, and we could take a picture.
Oops.
And we could show it's actually someone who's, helping put out the fire, and that's a completely false narrative. Now, I've been a victim of CNN, 60 Minutes, Forbes magazine, Reuters, Associated Press, you name them all. And I'm talking about 20-minute segments on 60 Minutes, smeared, right? Millions and millions of views on CNN, right? So it's something I know a little bit about, and it's something I want to share how you can summon up, I think, the courage to tell your story wherever you live. Marnie's talked about it, getting involved locally. Mel K talked about it. Ryan Christian, of course, talks about it. Jay Dyer's talked about it. Where you can get involved in your local community with just one thing, which is in your pocket. This one thing's your phone. And you can take a picture of the supposed mostly peaceful protesters, if it's a BLM smashing every window on 3rd Avenue in Santa Monica, right? Smash every window, mostly peaceful protesters. If you don't put a BLM sign in your window, you're going to get your whole business. Two people trying to protect their store were murdered. Didn't get reported. Santa Monica. I went to Santa Monica and was threatened by BLM to tell that story. But you can tell those stories with your camera, film it, and send it to people that are in journalism, and they'll publish it, and they'll republish it. Mel K, I've done a lot of shows with her. Ryan with Unlimited Hangout, Jay Dyer's show. And these are the people that you can work with and become a part of their network. You don't have to become a part of my network, the great Peter Duke's network. You can do it for yourself. And the power really is here. This was a television studio only 30 years ago. They had to send out a truck with a satellite and so forth, and now you have that power with Wi-Fi. So it's your way of fighting back. Okay, so that's citizen journalism. Now, I want to tell a little tiny bitty story about me and how I got into this, if it's with your permission, and then I'll tell a little bit about 2 stories I've worked on, if that's all right. So the first thing is, I didn't want to ever be a citizen journalist. This is all happenstantial. I'm an accidental journalist. journalist. That was my name for a while. I was in high tech. I was selling software, computers, fixing networks, making a lot of money. Believe me, don't ever go into journalism if you want to make money. It's a total loss. But I was with a company called Network Associates, and one of our subsidiaries was McAfee. You know the McAfee where you try to do your antivirus
software.
And we bought a company, Bill Larson, the CEO, and I worked closely with him. We bought a company in Moscow. And it was supposed to be a bunch of antivirus writers, and these were the guys that were in cyber warfare in Russia, right? And they were going to come in and help us write the best antivirus software possible. Well, I found out that they were actually writing viruses and spreading viruses in order for us to sell software. That was my last day at that company. I left Network Associates. Yeah, I left Network Associates, but that's not right. That's not the way to make your numbers, so to speak. And it presaged what we're living right now, which is release, what I believe, is release the virus so that you can sell the vaccine and the social control that comes along with that. So that's my story. And the guy who ran that group of 12 people that we got from Moscow was a guy named Dmitry Alperovich. And you'll never forget a guy named Dmitry Alperovich if that's the reason why you left a company. That's why I left Network Associates. Well, my red pill moment, I would make a lot of money, raising kids, trying to make them doctors and lawyers and such. Actually, no, just trying to make them doctors, but nothing against lawyers. and one did become a doctor, and others a nurse, so okay on that. But I saw 16 years later, there was this DNC hack. Remember all that hack, how the DNC got hacked? And the guy running, 16 years later, the guy running the investigation was Dmitry Alperovich. And I was like, this is a criminal. This guy can't possibly be running an investigation of anything. He was the guy who illegally wrote viruses so that we could sell antivirus software. That's the worst kind of ethics you could possibly have, right? So that's my red pill moment. That's when I said, I got to get involved in this thing because no one out there knows this guy's background. And that's where citizen journalism comes in, because you're personally aware of a lot of things. I've talked to a lot of people at Fort Campbell up here, 50 miles away, with the 101, at Arnold Air Force Base, where they test all the planes down here, F-35, F-22, the drones, all that stuff. Every person out here has tremendous expertise in something that you've done. You've either done it in school, church, at work, through your personal relationships. You can add to this mosaic, a family puzzle that we are trying to do to beat the bad guy. We heard a lot about evil stuff. And I'm sorry, when I get emotional, I go back to praying because, you know, I just met Kathy O'Brien. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? Now, I'll admit, I was a victim as well, but not like that. Not like that. Her first 30 years, and somehow she summoned up that courage to not only get beyond what she had happened to her, but then now came up here, and now she can share it with you on stage. Praise Jesus on that. Praise Jesus on that. If I only had a little of that. So that's the first story, is when I got involved. And what I did is I took what little I had. I didn't have Patrick Byrne. Thank you, Patrick Byrne, for being a huge underwriter of this, by the way. Patrick Byrne. It wouldn't happen without him. 330 million or something like that he's worth. I didn't get into seven figures, but I put almost seven figures into the idea of citizen journalism. And what we did was we had these organizations and groups come together and meet and talk about how we could be citizen journalists. And we had about 30 of them. We've had them mostly all over the country. But we had a couple in Europe. We just had one in South Africa, Cape Town. Near a vaccine factory, billion-dose vaccine factory down there by a Chinese billionaire who also owns a gene therapy out-of-the-way military installation in the Allegheny Mountains in Pittsburgh, near Pittsburgh, called Windburg. It'll be important later, Windburg. So that transitions into the first really big story where I got in trouble with CNN. CNN, we had a group like this charrette come together on the Potomac River. We had 12 people go to this big beach house in the Potomac there, just down the stream from Washington. And we started looking at, it was March 2020, so it's just at the beginning, even before the WHO had just announced that it was going to be a pandemic. And I got all this information together, and we started looking at the data and said, hey, wait a minute. This DARPA Adept, whatever this DARPA Adept thing is, they wired this thing. They wired this bid so that DARPA Adept is going to win. And we looked at the WHO bids in August, September timeframe. It was wired for DARPA Adept. This is even before there was a pandemic. And then we looked back and it said that there were 3 months before that, there was a Welcome Trust bid for this DARPA Adept. What the heck is this DARPA Adept? Whatever it is, they really wanted to win. And this is even before the pandemic was released, or however it got out. Well, later we found out DARPA Adept was mRNA, was the mRNA shots. We traced it all the way back 10 years to a whiteboard in Arlington, Virginia at DARPA headquarters. And the guy who wrote that up, Whitney Webb, has done such great work, by the way, on this. Yeah. She has done incredible work on anthrax, coronathrax. Brian's group has run this fantastic work. Check out Whitney Webb if you do nothing else. I'm a poor imitation. I'm no relation. But on this whiteboard, he writes out in 2010 the basic premise that we're going to have mRNA. It's going to replace all other vaccine technologies. It's going to replace all the eggs. We need a couple of, like, Matt Dwyer talked about, he talked about these kind of problem, crisis, solution, that sort of, that thing, Bezimov, I think Patrick Byrne talked about it. That's what we need. We need a couple of these things, but then we'll get our mRNA. So we had outlined in March 2020, and so, okay, you're an investigative reporter, you know, WHO, you got this information, you got this information over here. What are the 4 or the 5 W's of journalism? Who, what, when, where, how, and why? So we said, well, who's getting the bids? You know, who's the key benefactor getting all the bids? It turned out to be this person named Virginia Banassi. I didn't know who Virginia Banassi was. She's getting not only the WHO bids, she's getting the Welcome Trust bids. And then we find out she is also doing the training of the Wuhan lab for leak training. Now wait a minute here. hey, something's going on here. If I was, in charge of building demolition, and I'm also going to get the reconstruction contract, and the building burns down, that's called, an inside motive or a moral hazard, right? That's not good. So we had outlined this. We even got it down to the actual email address, which was banassi@who.int, right? So that very specific, not guessing here at all, right? Well, we traced it back to NATO, and all these NATO guys with the same last name that were the head of the Italian intelligence, a nuncio to the Pope for the last 6 popes. The other guy was the head of the NATO spy school, Giuseppe. There's another guy who was training in Russia at the bioweapons facilities in Polsova and other bioweapons for anthrax, right? And we're saying there's bananas coming out of our ears here. We were joking with bananas coming out of our ears. Even other people that had doing the electronics for sniffing the air for bioagents. Those like 12 bananas. And then we had a guy who was missile, space, and defense. And I thought, why missile, space, and defense? And his wife was a armed diplomatic security services person, right? And they were actually at the Wuhan Games where this same day event 201 happened, the same day this big release happened. Now, armed diplomatic security services are the guys with the thing, they're watching, oh, here he comes, look. They're trained to protect diplomats for terrorist attacks, okay? So that was the woman, and then the husband was this person who was, missile command. This is like, what the heck is this? But there was supposed to be just an athletic event. Right, so I reported this bunch of bananas. Well, including this person, Armed Diplomatic Security Services, worked all the way to the top of NATO Supreme Allied Commander. So it wasn't no in between, all the way to the top general, which is typically the people who spend the money for a company called In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA slush fund that invested in things. So the bottom line here is we called out the tableau of all these Banassis, the bunch of Banassis. What CNN did was they went over here. They said, throw out all those top dogs. Throw out most of the bunch. Take just this one little banana over here, which is a cyclist. We're going to slice the end off. We're going to leave out our diplomatic services. We're going to leave out the fact that NATO general all the way to the top. We're just going to say that she's a cyclist and an Army reservist. And then it's George Webb, going after an Army cyclist. She was from another country. She was from Holland. There were a lot of things going on that didn't make any sense. So this is what I'm saying is, you're going to have resistance. When you try to tell the truth and say, hey, this might have been by all the NATO people here and all the diplomatic people and all the people at the highest level of intelligence services, this may have been a controlled release. This may have been a problem, crisis, solution to move you all to mRNA, right? That's when the reign started with CNN. Okay, so that's two. Only one more, folks, and I'll be out of here. Okay, the last one is now. Where are we now? Remember that Windber lab I told you about? Okay. This billionaire down in South Africa with the billion-shot factory that they're going to put in for mRNA for everything. Not just for mRNA, but cancer as well. Not just for COVID, but cancer as well. That's what's coming. Okay? That's this lab that's in the middle of Pittsburgh. Well, I started looking into this guy. Like, why does a billionaire want this breast cancer lab? The town is only 4,200 people. Franklin looks like a megalopolis compared to this 4,200 person town. Windber, W-I-N-D-B-E-R. So it's like, what the heck's going on here? Well, I find out that there's over 100 PhDs in this little town. It's supposed to be a breast cancer facility. It was heart before that, gene therapy for heart. And then after that, they did some other things. But why 100 PhDs? And they also have a genomics lab. And they also have a proteomics lab. Now that can be used in breast cancer for the mammography. Son's an interventional radiologist, so I got a little bit of an inside person I can talk to about these things. So I'm looking at it and saying, okay, well, who's running this place? It's got to be a PhD or somebody, that really knows everything there is to know about, breast cancer. They're going to know about the breast care genes, BRCA1, BRCA2. Well, actually, it looked like a private mill for patents because over here it was actually a band leader that was put in charge of this place in 1999. A band leader. Now, I'm starting to think I could run a breast care center, of a band leader. Now, you'll never guess where the band leader was from.
China?
Boys Town. Boys Town. The same John DeCant, remember? Franklin scandal? Boys Town. Yeah. And he had, most people don't know this about Boys Town, they also had 40 PhDs and a proteomics and genomics lab. So part of citizen journalism is asking why. That's the W, it's the hardest one of the W's. But why is a band leader over here at Boys Town with 40 PhDs in genomics and proteomics, that doesn't sound like tuba and piccolo. And then he goes over here to this other one, which is greatly expanded with 100, okay? And now he's also got a genomics lab. Why? Let me take you back to one day in time, September 11th, 2001. Do you all remember what you were doing on September 11th, 2001? Is there any person in this room that does not remember where they were? You don't, oh yeah, you're too young. See, if you'd have to be under a certain age, because I tell you, anybody who's over the age of 40 knows where they were on September 11th. There's one guy who didn't. There's one guy, I asked him, because I wanted to research this Windmer lab, because he had put it on his resume, and he was proudly showing it to the court. He's putting it on his affidavit, saying, I'm a champion for vaccine people, for vaccine injured, and I'm going to go out, I was the inventor of mRNA, and I'm going to stop this thing that I created, this horrible monster that I created. And Bob Malone. Bob Malone couldn't answer where he was. Created all kinds of incredible, he retweeted people who said, I did 9/11 with my brother. No kidding. He retweeted and said, I've been doing felonies with my brother. I haven't talked to my brother in 5 years, 4 years. By his, well, anyway, long story, but bottom line is, I'm just trying to do the journalism. We're just trying to do the journalism. Let me tell you what happened the morning of 9/11 at Windmer. Bob Malone's boss, a guy named Nick Jacobs, Bob Malone's boss, Nick Jacobs, said, we had a meeting at 8 a.m. 8 a.m., now remember, Flight 93 doesn't leave until 8:42, with Mossad, top general at Mossad, and a guy from Special Forces, who's a Special Forces Ranger, like the ones they train at here at local Fort Campbell. Now to me that says something big has happened. Okay, this isn't me testifying, this is Nick Jacobs saying this is happening. I'm meeting with Mossad, a guy who used to be Mossad and now he's a top expert, okay? And while this Nick Jacobs is there, they say the first building just got hit during the meeting with a plane, and then they show the second building, and hey, we're under a terrorist attack. Now the subject of the meeting that morning was an anthrax attack, and how this genomics and proteomics lab should be repurposed away from breast cancer over to anthrax, getting ready for anthrax. Now, the plane, if you remember, Flight 93 is flying back and it's going to supposedly hit the Capitol building, right? Dick Cheney invokes what's called continuity of government. Continuity of government. Does anybody know what continuity of government is? It basically means we're going to suspend all the rules. The Constitution's out. We're going to send the Congress to West Virginia. We're going to send the president up to Rock Raven with the Joint Chiefs. We're going to send the Supreme Court out to Asheville, North Carolina. And now I'm in charge. Whoever wrote the rules. Well, who wrote the rules? Dick Cheney and a guy named Ollie North. The original guys that did Iran-Contra. And they could do whatever they want. And they did whatever they want. They collected all surveillance. You know Snowden with the NSA. They put in that. They also put in something called the National Clandestine Service, which is plainclothes informants, which went from 1 million to 3 million in our country. They also put in something called had reason to do the Iraq War, 20-year war, and also the Afghanistan War, which is another 20-year war. And probably some people say the Arab Spring after that. So a whole bunch of bad stuff happens when you let the Dick Cheneys of the world get continuity of government. What's the one way that Dick Cheney could have invoked continuity of government that day to shoot that plane down? WMD. If there's WMD on that plane, and they can go prove that there's WMD on that plane, you can invoke continuity of government. We know continuity of government was invoked, and that also took off our promise that we wouldn't do offensive bioweapons anymore through the 1973 BWC convention. So we got bioweapons and gain of function out of this too, folks. And that's what encouraged them, because we didn't stop and ask questions about anthrax. And the anthrax gang that ran this, Whitney Webb again, has done an incredible job. You gotta go to her thing. The same people that did the anthrax gang were the same people who did the coronavirus gang. The anthrax 911 people, same people as the corona 911. You see the pattern. They're finishing up unfinished business. They're finishing up unfinished business. And that's what happened. So we have to keep asking questions about Windmer. We have to keep asking questions about what happened to our Constitution? What happened to our government? Because it could have been in that pile of rubble out there in Shanksville, you know how far the flight landed from the Wimber Institute, where they were already getting ready to do anthrax? From that morning, they saw it 16 miles. 16 miles away. Yeah. So it seems all too convenient, right? A little too convenient to basically throw the Constitution out into the trash can. So that's what citizen journalism is about. In no way, shape, or form am I making any money on this. I spent every penny I've had. A lot of people, the first thing to do is accuse you and say, oh, this is how you make money. I'm not making any money. All I'm trying to do is answer the truth about what really happened back then and how those same methodologies are being used now. Jay Dyer talks about it very well in his book, his analysis of this, problem, crisis, opportunity. But here's the good news. Here's the good news, and I'll end here. You, with what you carry in your pocket, this phone, not only can film things and get truth that way, you can also do some Google searches. And what we teach at our journalism events is something called a compound search. You can take any two things. You can say Bob Malone and Wimber. You can do that search right now if you want. You'll see what I'm talking about. Why wouldn't you talk about 9/11? If you were the guy who was running out there, the white charger on the horse to save everybody, if you went out and got the anthrax and you saved everybody, you should talk about it and share it with us. I'll tell you my final thing. I talked about Kathy O'Brien with Rumsfeld, the most ruthless man ever. Nixon called him ruthless. Even Kissinger called Rumsfeld ruthless. Right? I'll tell you what I think happened. Rumsfeld knew he sold Saddam Hussein anthrax. Why? It was a force multiplier for the Iraq versus Iran war. And they knew American troops would have to face anthrax in their invasion. That's why George W. Bush stopped 100 miles short of Baghdad in Gulf War, right? Because we didn't have a countermeasure. We didn't have a vaccine. Right? And that's why the operation went from 40 PhDs to 100. Because let me tell you, the three people who run the Wimber Lab, 2-star missile space and defense, 1-star missile space and defense, Colonel missile space and defense. Does that not sound to you like Star Wars? Well, it should, because that's who runs Star Wars. And the program they ran that was running out of gas was called Smart Pebbles, for shooting planes out of the sky in a shotgun-like manner using something called a railgun. I've seen the railgun and heard the railgun about 100 times fired off at the Dahlgren Surface Warfare Center, where I live in Cobb Island. Just saying, folks, we have to look beneath the scenery and the push over fake Potemkin villages and look deeper as citizen journalists to get the truth. Thank you all very much.